Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. So today we're going to talk about some math. We're going to talk about some football. We're going to talk about some math and some football. Let's go. All right, so here's how this video is going to go. We're going to talk about football, how it's played, things on a professional level, recreational level, money, the NFL, NCAA, video games, and just so much more. And I look forward to it. And the idea is to talk about football and how math is involved at just every conceivable level. And it's also meant to encourage you to not only see things through that lens, but also discuss. So with that in mind, we're gonna go in, and towards the end, I will talk a little bit about John Urschel because it's like, come on, you can't talk about math and football and not talk about that guy. And if you know why, cool. If you don't, stick around or look it up, whatever works for you. But I hope you stick around. So okay, here we go. Like for you all out there, if you're a fan of football, and for context, we're focusing on American football, then it is a game where you have one team versus the other, and the idea is to score points. And it's like, well, one, that's already inherently mathematical, but it's like, well, how do you score those points, right? The basics are, if you're on the offensive side, you have possession of the ball and you're trying to get to the other side of the field, get that touchdown, which is worth 6 points, and then you can either go for that 1 point kick afterwards, or you can go for the 2 point conversion. So if you make the touchdown with that kick afterwards, 7 points. 2 point conversion, eight, right? Simple enough. And it's possible for you to miss. It's also possible for you to, if you're not going to get that touchdown, make a field goal. Where you're kicking that ball across the field to get past that goal post. Sorry, yeah, to get 3 points. And so there's just math just inherently involved with how the game runs on the basic scoring level. And then you have the idea that there's a lot of math throughout, right? Because there's math in how many players are on the field. There's math involved with the ball itself, in the field itself, right? With the ball, the shape of it, uh, the air involved in it, how it feels, and how much force is being attached to that ball as it's being thrown and being caught. Then there's also the idea of the field, its dimensions, how long is it, how wide is it, how is it divvied up, and things are conveniently labeled on a lot of fields, notably on a professional level, which is kind of cool. But not only that, right? There's math in the players and what they're doing, right? There's math in how fast that they're moving, right? There's math in them being able to not only understand where they are position wise on the field, but also other players. There's math in catching the ball. There's math in throwing the ball. Math in like actually being able to keep it. There's math in interceptions. Math in fumbles. Math in the amount of downs you have and what counts as that and when that time is up. There's math just on every conceivable level throughout the plays that the players are making, right? And how they're devised and how they might change. There's math at every step. There's a lot of math, a lot of physics, and just so much going on. And then the players themselves, as they're going on throughout their careers, and on that professional level, right? Like they've already coming in with some stats, right? That's how they're getting there in the first place, right? Because they come in having played college ball and having some stats and doing the draft, and there's math in that draft, and uh, what happens with that, right? And I think that's cool as well. And so they're coming in with some stats, and that's only accruing over time. And not only is that useful for the players and the coaches, but also useful for the spectators. If you're keeping track of fantasy football and you're into that, it's useful there. Useful in gambling, which, for the record, I'm not condemning or condoning, but it is in fact illegal in a lot of places. Make of that what you will. But whether you're gambling illegally or legally, you're using math. Just saying. But yeah. Seriously speaking, though, so like having an idea of the stats and what's going on is useful for that. And speaking of the spectator, you're using math as you're watching the game, right? Because you're keeping track of the position of the players and the ball and how fast everything is moving, and you're keeping track of the score. And then back to the players playing the game, right? Not only are they using math, but the referees are when they're looking at them and they're making the calls, and the coaches are using that along the way. And not to mention, if we're just talking about the professional level, um, for a long time, right? That was the only way like the players were going to be making that kind of money, right? And with that money, math, right? There's math in how much money is involved in the deal of an individual player, like how much money are they getting, and over how many years are they getting it. And there's math, and not only in that, but how many games they're playing, and there's math in their exercise as well, right? Because that's how you stay fit. That's how you get stronger. And so they have to monitor what's happening when they're playing, but also monitor their training and what they eat. And there's math in all of that, right? There's math in the food and how it's prepped, but also what it's doing to your body. There's math in how many calories are involved, how much fat, how much nutrition is involved overall. And back to the exercise, like what they're doing, right? They have to keep track of the strength training, sure, but also the cardio side of things and also the coordination side of things. So doing activities that boost those areas is key. So it's like, well, what are you doing, right? And so they have to be cautious of all those things. And then in terms of how like things on a professional level are structured, if we take the NFL for instance, right? You have 32 teams and evenly divided into the NFC and AFC. And over the course of 18 weeks, the games are getting played out. And eventually, you whittle down the remaining teams to the playoffs. And eventually, this culminates in the Super Bowl. And throughout all of this, there's a lot of money. And circling back to the college level, there's more options involved for players than there has ever been. Because for a long time, players were not able to profit or use their likeness to make profits, which that sounds redundant more than I wanted to. But my point is, like, they're not able to profit. They weren't able to use their likeness, and that has since changed. But with the NCAA, they don't deal with just football. There's other sports, any college level sport, really, or just about. And there's also other sports organizations for the college level, but they're like the biggest. And there's a lot of math in how all these organizations function and flow. There's also math and their classifications, because if you look at something like the NCAA, right, it's tax exempt and it's a nonprofit, and there are things that come with that. And at the core, it's math. You're dealing with money, you're dealing with these sort of classifications, what comes as a result, and you're dealing with math. Now, back to the game itself, right? There's so many rules and regulations that come with the professional level, and then on the recreational side, a little less so, right? You still have the basic rules, right? For a lot of people, but how strict things are gonna be like dependent on who you're playing with, right? So you might have the same sort of scoring system, but you might have less issues, right? And back to the game, and I realize I'm jumping all around. It is what it is. But back to the game, like just how long that is depends, right? Because like if you're on the recreational side, it depends on who you're playing with, right? If you're on a professional side, you have four quarters, um, 15 minutes in each quarter. And if you're watching on TV, you see that stretched out, and you see like there's time for commercial breaks, there's time for timeouts, and timeouts are also something that's strategic and something to be considered. So it's like you really can't get around math and football, and there's so many other things that I haven't mentioned that are about football, and math is at its core. And I think that's interesting, and I encourage you to discuss. And on the way out, I wanted to discuss John Urschel, because if you didn't know about that dude, so he played for the Baltimore Ravens. This dude was a professional athlete. He played football, right? But that's not all. So he retired from football to go to MIT to pursue his PhD, which he has since achieved. He has his PhD. So we're talking about Dr. John Urschel. And he got his PhD from MIT. And as far as I could find, he's teaching there to this day. And I think that's really cool because when I think about football and I think about other sports, I think about like how, well, one, they're fun, but also how they're mathematical in nature and how everything is. That's how I'm wired, and how I've wired myself. But I don't know what that motion was. But seriously speaking, though, it's like I like uh, what I know about his journey because it's like, so we have this dude who is professionally a mathematician and he's doing all this crazy stuff out there with that, but like he also did football. And not only is this cool because it's like, hey, look, you don't have to be one thing in this life, but it's also just cool because it's like, hey, we actually had someone who was, known as a mathematician who was playing football, and I think that's really cool because you can't get around the math and the football, or the football and the math and the football. Yes, I was right the first time, but okay, I don't want this video to be too long, but my whole thing is that like whether you're playing the game, coaching the game, spectating, no matter what the case, football is something that's inherently mathematical, and that's not a bad thing. But it's also weird to me that we don't talk about that sort of stuff on a larger level. But I do feel like that's something that's going to change in time, and I'm going to certainly be pushing for that change. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I want you to discuss how do you see like math in football? What are your experiences with it? How do you like the game? Who do you root for? But for that part, keep it cool. Either way, I'll see you in the future. Professor Prime out. Okay, so I am not fully done. I lied. I'm here. I haven't gone yet because gaming. I forgot to talk about gaming. So you have series like long running ones like Madden and like the NCAA titles amongst others. And no matter how you cut it, there's math in those games. There's math in gaming in general. There's math in the coding and building up the worlds. And in this case, putting the rules of football into that game, allowing the player to play those games. There's math in the players within the game, like the footballers, and there's math in their stats. There's math in how they move, how everything functions and flows. There's math in being able to use their likeness. There's a lot of money involved in said likeness, for instance, but also money on involved with these different companies coming together to have this game. And then there's like math in you, the player, playing the game, making those plays, observing the stats, making your decisions, playing against your opponents, which may be the computer, but it could also be your friend. And no matter how you cut it, there's math involved. Because not only are you taking football, something that's inherently mathematical, you're throwing that into gaming, which again is something inherently mathematical. You're putting them together, you're seeing the results, and you, as the player, not only are you playing these games, you're deciding whether or not that game is worth your investment in the first place. Because right, you're putting in time, you're putting in money, you have to make those decisions, and then when you're actually playing the games, again, you're looking at the stats, you're making the plays, and you're using the controller, and there's math just across the board. So I think that's awesome. And on that note, I'm actually going to end this video like for real this time, and I'll see you in the next one.